after all that we've had discussed, there's nothing much more to say. And I think everybody had quite some strong points. My brother, what's the name again?
My name? Oh, it's
Kenny. Kenny's...
Oh, my Kenny.
all the points were very valid. And I think the scenario that we presented, believe it or not, it's unrealistic. We all agree, right? It's a very difficult thing to do. But it's possible. Okay, in various ways, especially if you're young and you've come out of school. I don't know how many recent graduates here, as in you've come out of secondary school and you've just started up to uni, or you've gone to work. So I'm just talking about very young people. So of course you'd be earning more than the minimum wage, I hope. But who has heard the story of creative hindsight, or who knows has ever heard the word creativity in hindsight? It's where when people describe a scenario, that's when you become creative, i.e. you didn't know before, but when they told you, suddenly you thought, oh yeah, I could do that. All right, there's the story or a myth about Christopher Colombo. I don't know whether you know, he said he discovered America. And the myth says that there was a congregation held, and lots of the elitist people in society said, oh, we could do that. If I had a ship and all the resources, I could go to America and conquer. The land was there anyway, so what's the big deal? And Colombo came up on stage and says, could he have an egg? So they brought an egg, and he asked a simple question: who can make this egg stand on its head? Now we all know, all right, if we were given an egg now and asked to put it on its head, we'll be thinking that's impossible. All right? But people came, you know, they try and be smart and do it and do that, but the egg will never sit on its head. So Christopher Colombo gets up, takes the egg, boils it, and smashes it on the table. And it sits on its head. Oh, I could do that, I could do that. And he says, why didn't you do it? So the issue is, we can all, God says we have He's given us the ability to make wealth. It's all there. But sometimes we are not either prepared to make the effort, think it through, or do anything about it. And guys, we've talked about all these issues. I worked as a banking advisor for many years with Halifax. And this is the sort of thing we do. People walk in and literally say, I'm on a minimum wage, and I'd like to be able to save X amount of money. What can I do? It's a free service. But how many of us actually walk into the bank and say, this is what I want to do? We have financial advisors there who are ever so ready to talk to you and say, okay, you earn so much money, this is what you do, and this is how much you want to save. They'll go through all that with you and discuss what you spend on, where you live, how much rent you pay, and they'll do a proper analysis over time. So it's not just what happened last month, it's what happened the last 3 months. And then they strike an average and say, okay, based on that, this is how much income you've got left to save. So in reality, you can only save 50 quid a month, for example. But you want to do more. Then they throw it off to you. Where do you think you can make those concessions? I have a cousin who hates the, you know where you go to Tesco's, the value brand? Tesco's own brand, where the whole thing looks very colorless. And his wife will fill the trolley with this stuff. He will never go to the till, with her, if that thing is full of the value goods. He just doesn't like being identified with the value goods. But his wife thinks, that's cheaper for us. What's the big deal? You buy this luxury brand tomato, but then the cheap one is the same. True, the quality is slightly different. I did the Masters in Food Production Management, so I know a bit about what they do. But the reality is, the content is the same. The packaging is significantly different. They don't go through all the ads and the colorful print and glossy stuff. It's just simple paper, wrap it around and give it to them. It's the same thing. But we fuss a bit about that. But anyway, I diverse a bit. But essentially, what I'm about to do is pretty much what we've done. So hopefully, I wouldn't spend too much time going through this. So Are you doing that or that me? I don't remember putting a lot of snazzy things in the PowerPoint. But the points of discussion, which is a bit like this, is about income and expenditures, taking control of your spending. It's fundamental, but how many of us actually really, you know, when you go to, I work in the city, and one thing I notice every morning, people coming holding coffee. It's like an addiction. You know, holding the coffee is the addiction. It's not drinking it. It's almost, I need to be holding that coffee, that aroma. And they come in, everyone's holding this thing. But the coffee costs about £3, 25, thereabouts. And I tell myself, if you even spend £2 on coffee a day, and you work 46 weeks in the year, take 6 weeks holiday, that's about £460 on that coffee, £2. Make it £4 and it's 920. Then your lunch, £8, another 1,800. Before long, the amount you're spending on coffee and lunch is more than your council tax bill. That addiction, coffee, is so expensive. And the sacrifices you need to make. If you go to my office, there's a stash in the kitchen of coffee. There's milk for free. There's actually that Nespresso machine that you can make all this frothy thing and drink. It's all there. But the fact that people go to the kitchen to do it, I'd rather go to the shop, be served. You know, but I like to go there. The company's giving it for free, so why don't I use it? So these are the little things we need to take advantage of and make decisions. Managing debt. I guess as a young person, you don't want to have debt, okay? I left uni, well, I did my master's here many, many years ago, and I was given a credit card by HSBC with a £500 limit on this credit card. You know, young chap, it really feels like free money. And I'll use this thing and buy and buy and buy. After a few years, I had a £15,000 limit on this card. Limit. It's like, just use it. And you really don't stop. You want to go on holiday? Hey, you've got the money, right? But it's not yours. And then you deduct this minimum payment, and it gets to a point that's not affordable as well. So you need to manage that. Then mortgages. Obviously, mortgages is a big deal. I was going to ask how many own their own property here. Is that a fair question to ask?
No, not at all.
Can I ask how many actually own their own properties here? So, yeah, with a mortgage. Well, if you own your own property, there's no mortgage in it. Great for you. So 50-50. I guess the question always is, where do we start? Today, the properties are so expensive. Raising the equity, which is fundamental to the question, how much can we save $6,000 a year, is really key. Where do we even start from? And of course, we'll talk about some strategies to adopt and all that. So, not to go into detail, but we all know what the Bible says about planning. Essentially, the ant doesn't have strength or anything, but they do so much work to plan for summer, and we need to do the same. So this is essentially that. This is very interesting. Are you able to control it? Yes. Okay, if you can, then I'll ask you to go to the next slide, and then we'll take it from there. Just bring the whole page up. So this is just me focusing on some scriptures. We talk about money. But we need to really put God first. We all talk about tithing here, okay? And I have a slightly different perspective on tithing, but that's not for today's discussion. But you certainly, in everything you do, have to put God first. Because in all these things, you need to let God actually guide you and give you some thoughts. You know, I always say, Christianity is where you see the least innovation, and it doesn't make any sense. You know, Jesus points out that the worldly people, they're so shrewd in analysis. Why are we, who are God's children, so lacking in the level of innovation you see around us? And this is what we take, creativity in hindsight. We talk about iPhone. We all look at the iPhone and think, there couldn't be a better one. There couldn't be a better one. Surely there's not going to be another one. Surely, how much more could they do? And they keep coming and coming and coming. But a lot of Christians, and I'm talking Christians in all nationalities, we tend not to be as aggressive in our creativity. And I think sometimes that's because we don't want to take a step. And yet the Bible says we can make our plans. So there's nothing wrong with making a decision and making a plan that I'll do something different. Pastor Sil came to my house the other day, talking to my little nephew. That boy went away so charged up by the little conversation he had about feeling that because I don't have a certain background or skill, I feel other people will be more advantaged than I am. So he's already had a defeatist attitude, that as far as this career or this opportunity is concerned, I'm disadvantaged because I didn't do this and that and the other. And he really made the boy realize that, hey, that's not the view to take. I always wanted to do medicine as a little boy. And my headmaster, I told my daughter, my headmaster said, oh, if you do chemistry, physics, and maths, you can still do medicine. But then I did physics, chemistry, and maths, and when I got to university, everybody who was coming had biology. So by the time they got to those who hadn't done biology, the whole thing was filled up. So unfortunately, I couldn't do my medicine. But I keep telling him, if someone gave me money, I'm not here for Sil to tell me about this, I would still do medicine today. Because I know someone who at 44, as a nurse, stopped, went to do medicine, and is a millionaire in the US, making millions in the 60s. But that's when he made the decision in his 40s to go study medicine. So it can happen. But anyway, that's just a bit of nuggets, all right, for life in general. There's somebody going to talk about careers. So let's go to the next slide. I'll go quite quickly. So now let's go into a bit about what we've just discussed. We'll bring the whole thing up. I talked about walking into the branch. The only person who knows about your money is you. Nobody does. Only you know what is in your bank account. Only you know how much debts you've got and how you need to control it. And it's a very private thing. So you need to speak to someone in the Financial Services Authority who takes confidentiality serious. And that's why you walk into a bank and not go sit with just any nilly-willy person who would then go and tell, the church, sometimes we do the worst. You go and tell someone in confidence something in church. And after a while, someone random is telling you about your situation. And you're thinking, how did you know? And then they might say, he said it, but you didn't tell him. So it means he was told by someone else. And it's like, I just told her. They have to do your thing like Rooney's wife, right? Do an investigation to see who let the dog out. And I think for that reason, keep your confidential stuff confidential. But walk into the branch, trust me, they're there. They get bonuses for doing these things. It's free for you, but they get bonuses for enabling you to save money every month. So go in and have that chat. And you'd be surprised you walk out very happy. Of course, some of them will tell you, you know what, you shouldn't be saving anything. Go pay your debts off and sort your life out. But that's the reality. So you walk out, do that, and get yourself free of some of the stuff. So that's essentially what it is. So you need to separate your savings and your debts apart. So if you go to the next slide, so that's just knowing your status. I know we've run out of so much time. I know I don't even have time. So basically what it is now you want to get to work. That's exactly what we've been doing here. So I'll go to the next slide. Because I had an Excel spreadsheet I wanted to share with you. Are we able to open this? That's because the Excel spreadsheet is not in the same folder as the PowerPoint. It was quite key. Many years ago, I sort of ran through this with a few friends at church. There were many more young people there at the time. This is about 6 years ago, maybe. And I went through this thing about putting every expense down, including that coffee you are addicted to, on the Excel spreadsheet. List everything. Don't leave anything out. You're buying crisps or whatever, anything you buy. You see, the thing is, they say that the messages are new every morning. So somehow we think our cash is also new every morning. So when you wake up and you walk into that coffee shop and it's £2, you actually forget yesterday's £2 and the day before's £2. You don't really think that today I have spent £6 on coffee. Tomorrow I've spent 8. The next day is 10. Then Monday, you never think about it that way. You keep thinking it's £2 coffee. You see, and that's the problem. We don't realize that it's adding up. And every time you do the contactless, it's even worse. Because you don't feel it. But you check your account and you realize that all these little foxes that have come out of your account. And it's quite distressing. Anyway, these are just roundups. This is an Excel spreadsheet I did. Shared it with, gave my email address and said, if you want the spreadsheet, drop me an email. You will not believe how many emails I got from these young people at church that I should send this thing to them. It's a very basic thing. I've evolved from it a bit. But it was essentially to list everything. So if you see on there, you've got bank account charges. These are things you don't think about, right? You've got these, I have a bank account where I get insurance and everything, and so they charge me something. So bank account charges. We have remittances. Send something to wife's mum, send something to dad's mum. So that's there. Utilities, gas, electric, your water bill, council tax, home insurance, car insurance, your home telephone. You don't need these days. As Sil pointed out to me, he came to my house and saw my phone and said, do you still use this? You know, it's like, who uses landlines these days? Mobile appliances, so we got like your fridge and all those things. You have insurance on them. DVLA tax every month if you have a car. Life insurance. And guys, this is another thing Christians tend not to do very well at. We think when you take life insurance, what are you saying? That I might die tomorrow? You know, that sort of thing. But it's not a bad thing to have. Alright, so I have one and my wife has one. Classes, so we have like classes for our kids who do lessons and learn how to play the drums and all that's in there. We have a gifts budget. So every month, how much do we really want to spend on giving gifts to people? It shouldn't just come out of nowhere. We have to have a budget for it. And if this month we don't give anybody gifts, then at least next month we know we have 100 plus last month's 100. So if there was something very special, we could get them a very nice special gift, make ourselves look good, you know, give that big gift. That's because we got money from other months that have added up. So you don't have to always give gifts. You've got TV subscriptions like Sky, Netflix, and all that stuff. I've got Amazon Prime, Netflix, Sky. The other day I sat down and I thought, you know what? I need to drop this stuff.
What are you doing?
So I just called Sky and said, you know what? What's the basic one that's available? Yeah, what's the package? And he said, I think it was £22. I said, I'll have that. Give me the basic one. Because my daughters watch Netflix all the time. Then I like Amazon Prime, and apparently that comes with videos as well. So why am I doing this? Then I got my phone recently, Apple, and they give you this 1 year TV free Apple plan. You need to be very creative and cut things out. So that helps, and then you cut that out. Gym membership, that's a debatable one, but hey, you know, I used to pay to go to the gym for so many years, and after having paid about $1,500 after a point, I called them and said, you know what, no, I'll buy a machine and try and use it. Unfortunately, the machines are in my garage too, so they become like, so anyway, my wife goes, but I'm the one who's a bit tricky. Then I put some miscellaneous, so things which, you know, you put all that. Travel costs, fuel, and then school lunches for the girls. If you go down a bit, then you got like your debt payments. So you might have your mortgages there, you got 1 loan, 2 loans, credit card. So this is all your loans. It could be just a few, or it could be a huge list. And then you got your savings, personal pensions. Question, how many of you actually know how much your pension is worth? Okay. So quite a small percentage. Yes, if you see your Halifax account, assuming you have all your pensions linked with Scottish Widows, right? Yeah, so if you're Scottish Widows, then you'll see it in your Halifax account. But you may not have your pension with Scottish Widows, in which case it wouldn't be there. But essentially, it's even finding out. Call the provider and say, look, how much is my pension worth? Because you really, it's good to know. Unless you're going to have a property empire when you retire, so you don't need a pension, and therefore it's irrelevant. that's fine too. See, but the lower your pension is, the more challenges you might have when you grow. But anyway, that's saving. So I put that all there, and then grocery shopping, pocket money for me, and pocket money for the missus. All right? You have this in your pocket, I have mine. If we overspend, we know that you're doing something you shouldn't be doing. Just control it. And then, of course, you come down here and say, okay, what is the cost? Is that much? What's the salary? Now, this is all just tentative statements. Don't think I'm earning $4,000 a week or something. Question?
I don't see date night on that list.
You know something?
Yes, I don't see date night.
You can add that. It could be miscellaneous. We sometimes add like date nights or anything that's related to food. We very often incorporate it under the grocery list.
Right.
Because what happens is at the end of the month, because my business salary goes somewhere, mine goes somewhere, we try and take all the variables, the things which you pay outside the fixed amount, put it somewhere else and then use that separately. And then leave the sort of core ones that you can't change out. So essentially, when you've done this spreadsheet, and you put in your salary, so I've deliberately done this. So cost of living is 4,800. You pop in your salary and this number is red. That's how I formatted it. Which means I am short of that much every month. No. The savings is there. So all the savings here is fixed as well. But then I've got this short thing. So the point I'm trying to say is, once you get to this point, then you start to go back and ask yourself, this is what I've done with the Sky thing. Cut it out. I don't need it. Recently, we have 4 phones. So myself, my 2 daughters, my wife, we all got phones. They all have plans on them. And these days, get the iPhone. You can use the iPhone for years. Actually, I had my iPhone 6, which I used for 4 years, I think. Yeah. And so I just kept doing SIM-only plan, but the children of today, I'm using the iPhone 6, they want iPhone 11. Hey, and my daughter was like, oh, there's a girl in my class, she's got the iPhone 11 Pro. You know, that's not what I'm even aiming for.
£1,000.
And you want this stuff. And they sometimes put pressure on us as parents, right? And they come up with all sorts of things about stressing their life because they don't have an iPhone Pro. Look at this phone, I've got an iPhone 6. So my iPhone 6 was a 16 gig. Who does 16 gig these days? So the phone had got to a point where it wasn't really working properly. So I really needed an upgrade, right? So I called Vodafone and they were trying to be funny. And they sent me this offer and they said the offer didn't exist. I argued so much eventually, I got it very cheap. I got the phone so cheaply. I said, that's what we're talking about. Fight for what's right. So essentially, it's all about trying. So if you go up a bit again, just trying to adjust. So I sort of sometimes add a column here. To go further up. So variance just means, so if there's nothing, that's £20. So if I spent less here, that would just give me how much I've saved that month type of thing, right? But that's for my own purposes. Then there are things I've said are mandatory payments, so things that you can't do anything about. You stick them in, so there's a formula that sort of covers it there. And then you've got household bills, miscellaneous. So if your household bills are £500, you can really change it around. This is where you go to the shop and say, you know something, let's cut this luxury stuff out. This pasta from Italy, whatever. Every pasta is pasta. Just get the pasta that's Tesco's made. Let's have it. You know, sometimes we fuss so much. You know, there's a program on TV, or something that these guys do. I can't remember the title, but they go to houses and try and help them adjust. I can't remember what the name is, but it's important that this is really the core of what we're talking about today. Trying to arrest what your money is doing. Now, if you go down further down, so on here, I may not have said, where is it? Actually, this is wrong. There is something here which is giving. So we have a giving budget. I'll probably change one of these and made it that way. So you determine. So we work on the principle, and I was sharing this with my brother this morning. You need to purpose in your heart. This is how I see it. The Bible says, purpose in your heart what you want to give to God. Paul says, at the end of the day, who sows sparingly reap sparingly. Make a decision yourself what you want to give to God and pop it on. I know sometimes we get quite legalistic about the 10%. It really can tie people up. And when you look at the story that we painted, then you're telling that young person, for example, he's had some challenges. Whatever you do, you can't do anything about it. I know we do this in churches, and we do it in our church too, where it's almost like you need to pay that tithe and then die. But really, it shouldn't be like that. We have a gracious God, so at the end of the day, it has to be tempered with a level of grace. And you need to really make a consideration of your situation and give God what He is due. Don't tie yourself in knots. Well, it can be 20%, it can be 30%. Listen, in my opinion, it can even be 5%. Don't tie yourself in knots. Otherwise, the whole point of grace is lost. And as we talk about the money issues, it's not putting money first. As I said before, you put God first. Before you start thinking, what do I do with my money, Lord? Where do we go from here? So if you've got too much debt and all that stuff, it may well be because you're quite irresponsible. So you need to sort of backtrack and sort of deal with it. So if we now go to the presentation, so if you really need this, I can share it with you, but it's just an Excel spreadsheet, so nothing scientific. Okay. 5 more minutes, right?
Yes.
So, from what we've done, you'd have established what your expenses are each month. You should know what your spending habits are. I usually every now and then do like a MOT. So I print off 3 months bank statements. And then do that analysis as to, can I put this down now? It keeps going off. So I do like 3-month average as to what did I spend in the last 3 months on each of these things. Am I saving anything? Am I losing anything? Where are the losses? Try and bring myself back in. So once you know this, just see where your deficits are. Okay. So it's important simply to realize that there's a gap. All right. You just have to admit that I have a problem, or I'm a very wealthy guy. That's good too. All right. Now if you go to the next slide, if you just bring everything down. So as I said, you separate your cost into variable and fixed. So that's why I had the mandatory thing. There are things you can't do anything about. So if you've got loans and they're a fixed amount, your mortgage is a fixed amount, you can't do anything about it. Your council tax, it has to be paid. You can't do anything about it. But your phone bills and groceries, that's where the changes can come. So no matter what, that egg that you smashed on that table, it takes an element of shaking your system. Living in Liverpool, working in Glasgow, wherever it is, so SmithKline, upskilling yourself. All these elements are parts of the process to try and say, if I want to save £6,000 a year, these are the things I need to do. I establish what my income and expenditures are. I've gone to a bank, someone has helped out and says, you can save 50 now, and if you do X, Y, Z, you can go to 100. Have that understanding and knowledge within yourself and walk with it. Don't be ignorant about it. Resist that coffee urge. Drink the coffee from work, or drink no coffee at all. It's a healthy option. Drink lots of water, things like that. So and then this whole TV thing, it's amazing. What we have, it's amazing what we pay for every month without realizing it. So just find those boxes and just weed them out. I don't know whether free view boxes are still available, but I just said there that you can save quite a bit using them. So next one. Next one. If you've got credit cards, I always say, just go back a step, never stick to minimum payments. I'm sure lots of us have credit cards, and if you don't pay anything, at least you pay the minimum. Just don't do it. Whatever the minimum is, add £5 or £10. Add that to your savings list. I'll just show you how the impact it has. So, to go to the next slide, if you look at this graph, you click and so you see the other one. There should be a picture here. Oh wow, all this snazzy stuff. So if you look at this graph, this is saying I've got like approximately £2,500 credit card. This is where the credit card is maxed out. You've used it to its limits. There's nothing left. You've got quite a high interest rate on it. If your minimum payment at 2,500 was 50 quid, set up a standing order. All credit card companies are supposed to allow you to do this now. Set up a standing order for 50 quid, at least. So if that was your minimum payment, pay 50 quid from now on. Don't let, because you pay that and they charge you less interest, they say your minimum payment is less. No, pay £50 from then on. It will take you this long, 5 years, to pay that. By paying that fixed minimum all the time, then keep paying minimum throughout. It reduces from nearly 20 plus years to 5. Just by paying that minimum payment. Consistently. So whatever your minimum payment is today, if it's £100, decide that from now on, because that £100 you can afford, it's the minimum payment. If you can't afford to pay more, from now on, pay £100 a month on that card. Don't let them say next month's minimum is 90, so you pay 90, pay 100. The next month it would have gone to 80, pay 100. So it means you'd have paid £20 extra. And the amount you pay extra just increases with time. And it goes down so quickly. Banks didn't like telling people this, but now FCA says you need to tell people what they can do to stop this. And now they tell you. So if you're making minimum payments, they'll sometimes write to you and say, we're going to start asking you to pay something extra.
Does this apply to mortgage as well?
Mortgage is a bit different, but I'll come to that in a moment. You had a question?
Yes, I just want to emphasize a little bit about the standing order.
Yeah.
Because there's some banks, it depends on when you pay that standing order. If you pay at the wrong time, they will deduct that amount from your minimum payment.
Barclays card does that.
So you need to pay.
But you need, as I'm saying, every bank now is required to allow you to make a fixed payment rather than the minimum.
No, I'm just talking about the time. You need to basically understand the time.
Correct.
Actually.
Yes, what I'm saying is, so now because of that, so what I'm saying is, so you have to make them, so they have the way they behave based on the time. You need to make them do what you say, which is to say, don't take the minimum payment now anymore. Take a fixed amount. If the minimum payment is higher, they will take that minimum payment. If the minimum payment is lower, they'll take the higher amount.
Because I've set up a standing order. So
correct. If you set up a standing order from your bank to pay, that problem will happen. You need to let them take that standing order at the time that they need their minimum payment.
Okay.
And every bank is supposed to do that now. So if you just log on, you find that out.
And I was just going to add, so the issue is, let's say you set up a minimum payment or full payment amount. If you pay, let's say, 3 working days before that payment is due to be taken out, you can end up paying, let's say, double. So a lot of people don't realize, because they'll come into maybe some extra money and they'll think, okay, let me pay off my credit card, but they've forgotten there's the full payment still coming out. So they're essentially paying double.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. So that's what I'm saying. You need to make them. You need to make them do what you want. Don't just let it flow. Don't send the payment yourself. Make them take what you want them to take. If that makes sense. Yeah. So you log onto the account that way. So this just shows you the reality of how to beat the credit card, assuming you have them. So I'm appreciating that people have debt. So this is how they can manage it. Go to the next slide. We can go through this quickly, so you just let the whole page come. Just monitor your credit score. Credit scoring is a very big issue in this country.
Can I ask you a question, please? Don't say I cut you short.
That's fine.
Is it a must you must have a credit card?
No.
Because the reason why I'm asking this is that I might sound conservative, I don't really know, but I always believe in spending what I have, what I can afford. So I don't have a credit card, and I'm not ashamed to say it.
You shouldn't be, actually, you should be proud to say that. I mean,
I've always believed in spending what I have. It's me personally, I don't know about others.
okay, which is fine. So again, this is just another point. Monitor your credit score. You can pay 15 quid out into your bill, but at least you know what's happening on your credit file. If you go to the next one, mortgages. Big deal here. I don't know what your question was about mortgages actually. You said something about the same overpayment. It does apply, because if you're on an interest-only mortgage, which is something really you should avoid to do, then it doesn't really help. But if you're on a repayment mortgage, then every time you pay extra, it also reduces the time by which you have to pay. The thing about mortgages though, is that by paying something, it doesn't automatically reduce the amount you pay every month. They will keep charging you the monthly amount. So, but that helps in terms of how quickly you can do it. The mortgages are not big. Okay, question?
Sorry, we only have 2 minutes.
Have this short time. I think there'll be questions later, right?
Okay, I do apologize. Going to his point and saying, must we have a credit card? But we find that a lot of people advise us to have credit cards so that we can build on our credit. So if we intend on buying property on whatever and whatever, we do need a credit.
Not necessarily. If you have opened up a bank account. Now, if you open up a bank account, that goes in your credit file. There was a time it didn't used to, but now it does. So that counts as credit.
But is
and
it
how you use your money.
substantial to build on your credit?
It's fine.
Really?
Yeah. Now it's okay to have that. Because what credit are you looking for later? You see, that's the question you need to ask. What kind of credit do you want? A credit card? Probably not. Because that's what you're trying to open to increase your credit profile. But if you open the credit card to better your credit profile, what credit now do you want? You see, maybe it's a mortgage, but mortgages are different. You can have no debts, whatever. A mortgage is treated different because they're going to take a charge for the property anyway. So even though if you have a bad credit file, a mortgage doesn't actually they don't really worry too much about credit history because they're going to take the property as security anyway.
So it doesn't.
So they're the stronger part of the.
Oh yes. So it's better that you don't have too much debt.
We'll write it down.
So we'll probably get to that. There's not that much time, but I see there's lots of questions. I'm sure this can go around and they'll share it with everyone so you can see what it is. But we'll get into more detail perhaps as we go along with it. Yeah?
Yes.
Otherwise, we'll talk about finance till it gets dark. So I'm done now.
Thank you so much.